So in the earlier video you had seen how the plants are going to reproduce by asexual method, that is by the smaller plants will be doing what we call it as binary fission or fragmentation or spore formation, and then there were a vegetative propagation, that means they have got a modified root or a modified shoot or a modified leaf. So accordingly they will be reproducing through those particular parts of the plant. And we also saw artificial vegetative propagation, which was done by the method of cutting or layering, grafting or micropropagation. So these were the different methods which are used for asexual method of reproduction in plants. We are now going to start with the sexual reproduction in plants, that is, we are going to see how the plants are going to produce or fertilize their seeds, or how the plants are going to produce the young ones using their male and female gametes. So sexual reproduction in plants, the flower is the reproductive part of the plant. So you can see that flower is the main part, which is the reproductive part of the plant. So the male and the female gametes of a plant are present in the flower. To understand how a flower helps in sexual reproduction in plants, let us study a typical flower. So examine a fully open flower and note its different parts. The diagram shows the general representation of the floral parts of the most plants. So let's see the flower figure. So we have over here, the first part is the base. Now the base over here is the one which is called as the pedicel or the stalk. So the stalk is the base over here, and then there will be the part over here. This is the upper part over here, which will be thalamus. So this is the thalamus, and then you are going to have such kind of structure, which are the calyx. So these are the sepals, they are the green sepals, and they are collectively called as calyx. So calyx are the collective name given for this thing. And then you have the petals, which are going to be like this. So these are the petals. So this forms the petals part. Now, so these are petals. They are called as the corolla. Okay, petals, corolla. And then we have the main part. The first one is, let's take the female part. So we take the female part as blue. Let's take it as this one. So the female part will be like this, that where will be this particular kind of a bulging kind of a part, which will be having the placenta, and these are the eggs over here, which are nothing but the ovules. So this over here is the ovary. Okay, this is the ovary. These are the ovules. Okay, these are the ovules over here. So ovules in the ovary, and then over here is the tube-like structure. This tube-like structure is going to be going upwards like this, which will be having tube-like structure like this, which will be having a seed on the top. This is called as the stigma. This tube-like structure is called as the style. Okay, so stigma, style and the ovary, these three combine to give you the female reproductive part, that is the carpel. So combine this one and this one, combined is called as carpel. Okay, also called as gynoecium or carpel. And then we have the male reproductive part. The male part will be some filaments like this, one, let me two, then one like this, one like this, okay, and then so these are the filaments, and this filament has got a bilobe structure over here. This bilobe structure has got pollen grains in them, and these bilobe structure are called as anther. Okay, combined they are called as stamen. So stamen consists of the male parts, that is the anther and the filament. The anther contains small sac-like structures, which will be small dot-like structures, which are nothing but the pollen grains. So these ones will be having the pollen grains. So you can consider here pollen grains, which in fact they are going to come and sit over here and give the fertilization. So you can see over here, this is a typical flower. So a typical flower will be having the base over here. So this is the base, which is the stalk, and then the thalamus over here. These are the green colored base, which was originally the bud of the flower. The flower was being protected by this particular green colored leaf-like structures, which are the sepals, combinedly called as calyx, and then are the colorful leaf-like structures called as the petals, which are combinedly called as the corolla. And then the female reproductive part contains the ovary at the base, which is near the thalamus, and then the style and the stigma. The ovary contains ovules. The filaments and the anther are the male reproductive parts, and the anther contains the pollen grains. So these are the main parts, or the typical internal parts of the flower. So we see that stalk, the flower is attached to the shoot by means of a stalk or pedicel. So this is connected to the main plant, that is to the shoot in the form of stalk or pedicel. The tip of the stalk is enlarged and slightly flattened, from where the petals and other parts arise. This flattened part of the stalk is called as the thalamus. So this flattened part over here, so this would be over here. This is the thalamus. The thalamus over here, the flattened part is called as the flattened part, the thalamus. The next is sepals, the green part, sepals, collectively called as calyx. Collectively called calyx, these are the outermost part of the flower, forming the whorl of tiny green leaf-like structures. In the bud condition, they enclose the inner parts of the flower, providing them necessary protection. Sepals are green outer coat covering of the flower. So the sepals are originally those green leaf-like structures which were forming the bud. So before the flower just came out, it was enclosed in a bud. So that particular enclosure of the green colored leaf-like structures are nothing but the sepals. Collectively, so there will be 4 or 5 sepals, and collectively these sepals are called as the calyx. Petals, that is the red color part, the petals, they are the leaf-like structures which are collectively called as corolla. So corolla, collectively the collective thing of petals. Petals form the second inner whorl arranged next to the sepals. So arranged next to the sepals are the petals. The petals are the next range which is there. These are usually white or colored but never green. You never have a green colored flower. The flower will never be green, otherwise it could be any color. It could be white or purple or yellow or red. You have seen those flowers. The petals make the flower attractive. Petals are the large, bright, attractive parts of the flower. So the large, bright, attractive part of the flower is nothing but the petals. The next are the stamen. Stamen are the main parts. So stamen, the male parts. Okay, male part is the stamen. The next, that is the third whorl. Inner to the petals consist of delicate filament-like structures called stamens. So these are the delicate filament-like structures called as the stamen. Each stamen is formed by a long, narrow, hair-like filament. So there is a long hair-like filament. You can see this blue colored lines. They are the long hair-like filaments. And a broad, sac-like bilobed anther found at its tip. So at the tip of this filament is a bilobe structure. Okay, it's like this: one lobe, two lobes connected together. This forms a bilobe structure. Like, you know, if you see a wheat grain, if you take a grain of a wheat, the grain wheat is a bilobe structure. So similar to that particular grain wheat, but much smaller than that, will be over here, which is called as the anther. So broad sac-like bilobe anther found at its tip. Pinch off a few anther from an older flower and crush them between your fingers. You will find a powdery material coming out of your fingers. This powdery material consists of fine particles called the pollen grains. So this anther, they are is very soft. So if you just press it and then you muscle देंगे उसको, pinch कर देंगे उसको, so you will find that you will be getting some particles, very rounded particles, powdery particles on your finger. The powdery particles what are there are nothing but the pollen grains. So the pollen grains, the male part that is available in the anther. Stamen are the male reproductive part of the flower. So we can see that up till now, this one, thalamus, calyx, petals, all these were not involved in reproduction. They were the accessories which were available for the male and the female parts. The male and the female part are first one. The male part is the stamen, that is the anther, and the pollen grain is the main thing. So we can say the stamen are the male reproductive parts of the flower. The next we see is carpels. So carpels are the female reproductive part, which consists of the ovule, ovary, stamen, stigma and style. So carpels are the fourth innermost part of the flower. These may also be called as pistils. So it can be called as pistil. Similarly over here, stamen can be seen as androecium. Okay. This can be seen as carpel, can be pistil also, and gynoecium also. So pistil, carpel, gynoecium is the same words. Anther or androecium, sorry, not anther, stamen or androecium is also the same thing. So each carpel is formed of three parts. So a carpel consists of three parts. First, the swollen part over here called as the ovary. So we have over here a swollen part at the base, the ovary, a narrow thread-like structure, that is the thread-like structure over here. This narrow is called the style in the middle, and the terminal expanded over here is the stigma at the top. So ovary, style, stigma. Ovary, the basal swollen part, style, the thread-like structure, and the expanded one, stigma. So these are the four whorls of the flower. The flower has got four whorls. The first whorl, the calyx. Second whorl, the corolla or petals. Third whorl, the male reproductive stamen. Fourth whorl, the carpel. So four whorls. All flowers, if they are a complete flower, will have four whorls. A complete flower will have four whorls, that is calyx, corolla, stamen, carpel. Flowers bearing both male and female parts are called as bisexual flower. So it is not necessary that each and every flower will have a style, stigma and anther both. It may happen that some may have only the male part or only the female part, right? But if a flower has got both the parts, then we call that flower as a bisexual flower. That means it has got both the sexes, that is both male and female part present in the same flower. So it is called as bisexual flower. while those bearing only male or female parts are unisexual flower. So if the flower contains only male parts, then it is called as a staminate. Okay, it is called as staminate. Okay, stamen ka staminate. If it contains only the female flower, then ये pistil था, so it is pistillate. Okay, because this was named as pistil, so it was pistillate flower, only single L. Here, staminate. So, flowers bearing only one part, so that is if it is a male flower, then it is a staminate flower, unisexual. If it is a female flower, it is only female parts, it's a pistillate flower, only female part. The next is ovules. So you can see over here in the ovary, there is small, this circular spherical area. That is nothing but the ovule. These ovules are actually the future seeds. Okay, they are, you can consider as the egg of the flower or egg of the plant, in fact. So, slit open the ovary with the help of a needle. You will find small rounded bodies in it. These are the future seeds which at this stage are called as the ovules. So these are the ovules. Okay, this is the ovules which are present. They are round, spherical, ball-like structures present inside the ovary. Now we see the functions of the flower. You have learned that flower contains both male parts, stamen, and female parts, carpels. The pollen grains from the male parts are somehow carried by insect or air to the female part of the flower. This transfer of pollen from anther to the stigma is called as pollination. So what is going to happen? What is the function now? The function goes this way, that the pollen grains which are here, these pollen grains are going to travel and sit over here. Okay. So when the pollen grains from the anther goes and sits on the stigma, this could be done by air or by an insect or by itself. So when such a thing happens that this pollen grain goes and sits over here, this process is called as pollination. Okay? Pollination is the process by which the pollen grains from the anther goes and sits on the stigma of the flower. So the transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma is called pollination. Hence we define pollination as pollination is a process in which pollen grains from the anthers are transferred to the stigma of a flower of same species. See, it's very important over here that the pollen grains which sit on this should be of the same species. It cannot happen that the stigma of a rose will have a pollen grain of a lily on top of it and it gets fertilized. Not possible. If it is a lily flower, then it has to be the anther, that is the pollen grain of a lily flower sitting on the stigma of a lily flower. Yes, it could happen that it is of the same species but different color, like in case of tulips. Tulip mein ho sakta hai that a orange colored tulip is giving the pollen grain and its pollen is sitting on a yellow colored stigma. So and hence the color of the new seeds what is going to be giving out the new flowers may be different. So yes, that is kind of a possibility where it could be that the pollen grains are one kind of a flower going to the another kind of flower but of the same species. It cannot be completely different species. It will be between the same tulips of different colors. Okay, roses of different colors, but it cannot be of different species. Okay, so that is pollination is the process in which the pollen grains from the anthers are transferred to the stigma of a flower of same species. Got it? That is pollination. So now we see about pollination. So, okay, now we'll remain it. When I not need it, I'll erase it. Right now it's there. Now pollination will be of two kinds. Okay, but the erase it, I need to write. The pollination is of two types. One is the one in which the pollen grains of the same flower is going to be sitting on the stigma of the same flower. That means if the pollen grains and the stigma is both of the same flower or of the same plant, then such a kind of pollination is called as self-pollination. Self-pollination takes place between same flower or same plant. So when pollination occurs between the same flower or between the two flowers of the same plant, then such a kind of pollination is called as self-pollination. So the pollination is of two kinds, self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is one that occurs within the same plants, okay, within the same plant. If it is within the same plant, then it is called as self-pollination. The pollen grains from the anther may fall on the stigma of the same flower in a bisexual flower, or the pollen grains from the anther of the flower of one plant may fall on the stigma of another flower but on the same plant. So what is the option here? First option could be that the flower is bisexual. Flower has got both the parts, male as well as female. And because one flower has got both the parts, male and female, यहाँ से pollen grain rupture हुए anther से and they are sitting on the stigma of the same flower. So that's why bisexual में possibility is there that the pollination takes place within the flower. Such a kind of pollination is self-pollination. It could also happen that one particular plant has got flower over here and flower over here. This is the male flower, this is the female flower. यहाँ का pollination हुआ, anther split हुआ, pollen grains उड़े और वो उड़ के इसके ऊपर, इसके जो stigma के ऊपर बैठे. So the pollination is taken from the anther of this particular flower to the stigma of this particular flower. These are on the same plant. So this kind of pollination is also called as self-pollination. So self-pollination could be, in case of bisexual flower, it could be two flowers also or same flower itself. But if it is a unisexual flower, then it could be that it is one plant, same plant, two flowers, one male, one female, and the pollen grains are going from one flower to another flower and pollinating them. So in that case, it is going to be self-pollination. So self-pollination takes place between same flower or same plant. Same flower needs to be bisexual. This could be bisexual or unisexual. So this could be bi or unisexual. Okay. When the same plant, it could be anything. Both are possible. The next what we are having is cross-pollination. So next option is cross-pollination. Okay. So when it is happening in such a way that the pollination is taking place between two flowers in such a way that they are not from the same plant. Okay, एक flower यहाँ पे है जो किसी और plant पे है, and of course the same species, and another plant is over here with a flower over here. And if the pollen grain goes from here and enters here by any medium, maybe हवा से गया, या तो एक honeybee came from here and came over here, or maybe it's water, or maybe even you kids taking something like playing with a flower here and then playing with the flower here. Could be anything, basically any particular way by which the pollen grains from here are going to reach the stigma over here of two different flowers, not on the same plant. Okay, they are of the same variety but same species, but not growing on the same plant. Then such kind of a pollination is called as cross-pollination. So cross-pollination, you can see that they will be of different plants but same species, because of course if the same species is not there, then the stigma will not accept that pollen grain. See, stigma needs to accept the pollen grain, only then it can reproduce. If the stigma is going to have a pollen grain on top of it, and if that pollen grain is not accepted by the stigma, then pollination will not take place. And why will it not accept it? Because if it finds that it is not of the same species. If the pollen grain is coming on top of it of some another species, then definitely this kind of pollination cannot take place. Hence cross-pollination takes place in different plants but of the same species. So of course we don't need this to be a bisexual flower at all. Normally a flower which is going to have pollination done with the help of cross-pollination will hardly there are any chances of it being a bisexual flower. So a male flower and the female flower will be different. Sometimes the plant is such that the plant can produce only male flowers, and another plant of the same species will be what will produce only female flowers. So it is also possible that way. So in this case we find that cross-pollination occurs between two flowers of different plants of the same species. Pollination can occur due to any of the following agency like insect, wind and water. So these are the three agents of the pollination. So cross-pollination has got three agents. The three agents are, first one is wind, the second one is insects, and the third one is water. Of course these are just the general kind of agents. These are the agents, we call it as agents of pollination. That doesn't mean that it cannot have a pollination by any other means. There is a possibility that it could be water, it could be by some another means also, but of course these are the generally found agents which are helping the flowers to go for cross-pollination. So we will learn in detail about this different kinds of flowers and their pollination in the next video.